Welcome back to episode 176 of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, dude?
And on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And most importantly, today, we got Adev Aarons, the head of growth at GeniiData.
Hey, yeah. How's it going, guys?
All right, appreciate you joining us, man. So we've been talking about indexing in the ordinal space, how important it is. Mm-hmm. And so I want to ask you, Adev, like, give me your background, like how you got started in like the whole crypto space, just to kind of kick things off. Mm-hmm. And then we'll get deeper into the GeniiData and like all its functionalities.
Yeah, of course. Sounds good. So yeah, me personally, I've been involved in the crypto space for almost 7 years now. I got involved in early 2017. So close, come around 6.5 years, and kind of got first started with Bitcoin and just everything it was doing. I started to understand what the whole banking system was about, and this naturally start to shift over to want to know more about alternative investments after that. And that's when I quickly learned about Bitcoin and other cryptos and became completely immersed in the whole space, and slowly started to figure out ways to become a professional in the space. So I started to find different positions as far as in Bitcoin or in alternative cryptocurrencies, and that kind of led me down different routes. I used to help with marketing and business development for a Bitcoin ATM company, and kind of started doing things of that nature, and I found my niche and my strengths within the whole ecosystem, and slowly started to integrate myself that way. And I've then found myself with GeniiData, and been here for almost a year since. So
okay. How long
it's
is
been quite a time, good time.
You've been involved for about a year roughly. How long has like GeniiData been an actual platform or had some presence in Web3? If it was before your entry, how long has it been around?
Yeah, it was before my entry. We've been around since like June of 2022, May of 2022. Around that time is when GeniiData was formed.
So then it had to have come before Ordinals, right? Because Ordinals didn't really come about until the beginning of 2023.
Correct.
So yeah, what was the focus, I guess, if you know, like what market or demographic was GeniiData initially kind of like, targeted towards in those like early days? Because I know your focus nowadays is definitely Ordinals heavy, right? Just like the rest of us.
Yeah, of course. Exactly. So we kind of like first started as a strictly data warehouse company, and we were blockchain agnostic. So we were helping basically democratize data across the whole ecosystem. And we were doing that from anywhere from Bitcoin. We did Bitcoin gas fees and just the Bitcoin mainnet we were really focused on, to Ethereum, all the way to new chains that were being released like Aptos and other chains. So we were kind of providing data for all those new chains, and that was kind of our first footprint in the whole crypto ecosystem in a sense. And then we slowly kind of moved into providing data for traders, because it's kind of like it kind of makes sense. They're very much aligned. Just overall, like the different alpha you can get as far as what on-chain data provides, and we moved towards that. And then slowly after that, we kind of got involved in Ordinals. So that was about almost like a full year of just like kind of finding our niche, finding what, because we came to the market as basically a on-chain data company, and being able to provide data for all. So that was one of our like most important slogans, I guess you can call it.
Sure. So what was it about Ordinals? It started in January 2023 for the most part, and it took maybe about 2 months to 3 months before it got real traction. I remember talking about Ordinals maybe in February when we were looking at BRC20 tokens.
Yeah, I guess it was around March whenever the actual Domo released the BRC20 standard, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was.
And then, that's when things really picked up.
Yeah, so the BRC20 market went from like $23 million when we looked at it to $1 billion
in like
3
a
weeks.
few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess when it comes to like ordinals and GeniiData, what was it about like the fact that indexers play such a critical role? What about ordinals do you think is going to be like the thing that is kind of important to support, like as an ecosystem?
Yeah, you guys kind of, really hit it on the nail there. That's what kind of made us really interested was BRC20 tokens really took off.
Yeah.
And what Domo was doing and what the whole ecosystem was about started to make more and more sense. Then we saw other ordinal projects like OMB and other like, top tier like, Bitcoin whales and other ones take off too. And there was a lot of liquidity running into this space.
Yeah.
And a lot of innovation as well, and we saw kind of like, then we saw ORC20 come out, ORC20 token standard come out, and we saw no indexes were made quite yet. It could be a top tier token protocol. We're not quite sure. It's very nascent, super like it's already nascent in a nascent Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah.
So it's super young, and yeah, we just took a leap of faith into ORC20. We have really high end devs on our team, high end product developers on our team that have a plethora of experience in DeFi and even as well as search engine optimization, and the list goes on. So we decided to take a leap of faith into ORC20 because ORC20 was lacking the data indexer.
Yeah.
And we did that. We saw a lot of momentum, a lot of traction just from the ORC20 indexer release. Yeah, so we saw a lot of hype, a lot of excitement, a lot of traction in the ORC20 space.
Yeah.
So we just overall ordinals, but ORC20. So we decided to kind of go dive into other projects, in the space. That led to Ord Games. Sure. That led to Poke game that was created on Ord Games.
Right.
Then there was the namespace. So like the list goes on that really started, like things started to gain a lot of traction.
So I'm looking to understand like the strategy here a little bit. So you guys are focused on ORC20. Is it because there's plenty of indexers that covered the BRC20 space? Is that why you focus on ORC20?
Yeah. So ORC20 in the beginning seemed like a potentially good idea as far as it was almost like the optimized version of BRC20 at the time. But it's always tough to get consensus in the community.
Yeah.
And that was one of the issues that ORC20 kind of we kind of dealt with in the whole ecosystem around ORC20 dealt with. It was consensus issues.
Yeah.
That we just couldn't come to agreements with for certain things to make the indexer as accurate as it could have been. So we still obviously track. If you go on our profile on our GeniiData Ordinals, our newest product, we still have ORC20 indexer.
Correct.
And it just didn't pick up the traction that we thought it might have, or it could have. And we thought we were catching on to something early on.
Sure.
And that's why we're like, okay, yeah, let's do this indexer. It could be the next BRC20, and it could catch the imagination of many other builders like us.
Sure.
But it just didn't go from 20 million to 1 billion, obviously, like BRC20 did.
I feel like indexers think a lot like traders do, like potentially like degens do, because indexers will support anything that gets traction, and they'll index and they'll kind of like support that ecosystem, and then traders will go wherever the liquidity is. Like BRC20 isn't the most like developer friendly token, right? ORC20 is probably better.
Well, yeah, and you got to remember, like during the early days, whenever all that BRC20 explosion did happen, I think the only indexer in the room supporting all that was Unisat.
Yeah, correct.
So like the whole market was dependent on Unisat. I remember Unisat, I think, went down for like a little
I
bit.
remember
and
that.
like all those.
Yeah, your wallet was gone. Yeah.
No, all those tracking sites, right? Like brc20.io, all of them, the information was incorrect because they were all depending on those APIs, right?
That's right.
And for a second, I had a heart attack. I was like, "Oh no, dude!" Like everything just collapsed while I was asleep, apparently. But then I quickly realized, no, it's just Unisat's indexer, I guess, had a fault or something like that. And then once that happened, that's when this conversation started to kind of like permeate, right? That's whenever I first became even aware of indexers.
Yeah.
Like I've heard about it before because of you.
Yeah.
But now I know how important they are, right? And now the discussion of like how do we like safeguard the entire space from like this problem, right? I mean, obviously we need more of them.
Yeah.
And then we need consistency among the indexers as well. And then how do we decentralize this as much as possible so that,
Yeah. Do you guys think about that? Like, how do you guys, like, what's the final form of indexers for like Bitcoin? Like, is it like one single source of truth? Is it many indexers like supporting different meta protocols? Like, how do you see this rolling out like in its like mature form?
Yeah.
Yeah, we encourage other indexers and other data providers to work together because we believe open decentralized future is the best way to have distributed data and the best way to have the most accurate and most efficient and as well as you just said, there's been many cases where Unistat was the only one, and if there was a failure on their end, then there wouldn't be data provided for maybe a couple hours to a full day.
Yeah.
So we believe that it should be as distributed and open as possible. So we've been in talks with Domo and the other guy and some other players in that area about like Alex as well, the Alex protocol. We've been speaking with all of them, or the Alex team, not really protocol, but the team. We've been speaking on that with them about trying to open source our trying to help out with the open source indexer for BRC20.
So you reached out to them, or did they reach out to you guys? Is because we saw their unveiling of the indexer of indexers.
Yeah, collaboration of many indexers.
Yeah, so I would think GeniiData is going to have to play some kind of role in that, right? So
yeah, we're definitely trying to put our get our feet wet over there and have a little bit of a footprint there as well and help out as much as we can. We had actually somewhat of a relationship with Domo before he created the BRC20 token.
Oh, wow.
We were just in it. Yeah, it was funny. Myself, I had a conversation with Domo before, and then we had somewhat of a relationship. We wanted to have him kind of use our dashboard, like even before we got into Ordinals, right?
Yeah.
And then he blew up after he made the BRC20 token standard.
Yeah.
And from then on, we kind of like just always were talking. And then one of our team members, Coco, she's top tier. She was at the Singapore 2049 token event, token summit. And we spoke with a lot of the people, a lot of the high end people over there, from Alex to Domo, and we're in close contact with them.
That's pretty cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I guess if you could some insight, since you know him pre-Ordinals, like what was his origin? I guess
what was he doing?
What was he doing before he created that standard? What was his involvement? Just so we know a little bit more about, because at this point, like you're saying, he blew up, right?
Yeah.
There's almost like a godlike entity. He shows up at these events, conferences, and he maintains his anonymity, right? Yeah. And he's Domo, right? So how come he gets to decide? I mean, of course, he was first to bring like a fungible token standard, but like you're saying, ORC20, even though it's more technically probably capable, we're seeing things like TAP,
right,
and the track ecosystem much more functionally robust. But how come there's so much of like an organization forming around Domo, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is your insight into that, you think?
I think Domo is very calculated, and I think he knows what he's doing. I also, before all of this, he was just a data dashboard analyst. He would create doing analytic dashboards and was creating really high end comprehensive ones. So he was like a very high end SQL developer, and he had obviously can code in basically any language. He was very very well versed in other forms of coding. But yeah, I mean, I literally just was like, yo, like I had a conversation with him, just like kind of what we're having, not as like official, but it was just he didn't show himself on the camera, but it's kind of still having the anonymity to him. But he was just a really cool guy and just wanted to. He's very open, very friendly, very open, and I think that's one of the things too. He's just always trying to develop and create and be open about what he wants to create and how he wants to see the space move forward. I think that's a very important thing that he emanates when you speak with him. And the thing is with ORC 20, it was kind of like that, but there wasn't a figurehead behind ORC 20. Just like with BRC 20, there's a figurehead behind it, and I think that helps out a lot.
I feel like we need to personify all these protocols.
Yeah,
because once you personify them, you can kind of identify with it's like Satoshi Nakamoto. Everyone is Satoshi, right?
Or like Fatoshi with bitmaps.
Exactly.
Right? There has to be some. Even though these are like leader lists in a sense, like the community and the consensus around that is supposed to be kind of like what navigates the future trajectory to these sectors or whatever. But nonetheless, we all need something we need like a figurehead, somebody to keep us all motivated, I guess, or something. Every now and then the community can't just come to a consensus, right? And it's good to have somebody present.
I guess we gotta always have somebody to worship. Right?
Worship?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It could be.
Well, that's coming from you because you actually do worship Satoshi. So worship or just, I don't know, there needs to be some sort of like embedded, I guess figurehead's the right word. I don't know. Somebody we can all kind of rally around, right?
Yeah.
Anonymous or not. So.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built Mscribe, the first inscription platform built from the ground up for the metaverse on Bitcoin. Connect your Bitmap Ordinals and use our tools to bring your community into the virtual realm. Support us by joining the movement at mscribe.io. Like, comment, and subscribe for the latest alpha. Back to the video. Yeah, so Adev, you mentioned Dune Analytics. So what is it that makes GeniiData distinguishable from Dune Analytics or other popular data services?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that makes us a little bit more different than a regular, from Dune or from Flipside Crypto is our dashboards are all like open and transparent, and we have like a GeniiData Studios. So anyone that creates on our dashboards can creates on our GeniiData Studios, and basically you create a profile, and within that profile anyone can view it. So on Dune and on Flipside it's more opaque and it's not as transparent, so you can't see how everyone actually used their SQL or their coding to let's say extract certain data to create this specific dashboard, or what trends they were trying to basically showcase. In ours, you can see all of the coding that went behind it. So that's right there, a little difference. And then as well, our SQL is different. We use a different type of SQL coding than Dune or than Flipside Crypto and some of the other guys.
So do you have to be a developer to leverage GeniiData, or how do you create these dashboards?
I would say you need some type of background in SQL. Okay. That would definitely help. So you need to have like a broad knowledge of how to use SQL. What I will say is, though, if we have a ton of dashboards that are on our dashboards on the Insight tab on our website. We have a ton of dashboards that have like mock-ups or
templates.
Or just like templates.
Sure.
Yeah, like templates. And like ways that we've created free trial type of dashboards that are legitimate data from legitimate data sources, and you can actually kind of use a lot of that code or those like snippets of SQL code to help you navigate to create your own dashboard. We've had a couple people that a couple collaborators from the actual Ordinal space. I shout him out, Sam. He created a few dashboards with actually no SQL background at all, but he used ChatGPT and other like
say.
other ways, and as well our service too that we offer. He used all of those to actually create a pretty comprehensive dashboard from just from just that. So I think it's ideal to have a background
Sure.
in the coding aspect of SQL, but
these days you just need ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly. You don't these days. You have ChatGPT. You have a lot of tools around you that can help you really figure out how to go about making a pretty comprehensive dashboard.
Has anybody released like a guide or anything that you're aware of, like a how to build a dashboard step by step with ChatGPT? Anything like that?
Oh, that's a great idea actually. Yeah. I think we should speak with some of our collaborators that did that.
Yeah.
Like we have like tutorial dashboards on our website, so you could like just use all that code, like custom code that's inserted in here already.
Yeah.
And then just ask ChatGPT, like, is this a matter of prompting ChatGPT correctly?
Yeah.
And kind of having like a good background on like understand like some type of like service level background on SQL, and you can like, and then use our coding that we have in the tutorial to kind of create something pretty high end. But that's a good idea too. There's other things that we're trying to do to make it a more user friendly tool. So someone like me, I'm not the most technical person. I don't really have much of a background in SQL or Python.
Sure.
And like someone like me or others that can just come on here, like, I want to create a dashboard to see what's happening in the Bitmap ecosystem, what's happening in the namespace ecosystem, or what's happening with OMB, or what's happening with Bitcoin frogs, right? I want to make a dashboard like that. And eventually I think we're going to add a lot of layers on top of what we have to help with help make these dashboards and make it a lot more simple for the simple user like me to use GeniiData.
So I'm curious, like, where the source of the data come from? Is it from like the indexing part of GeniiData, or can you use like any database to like kind of put together a dashboard?
Yeah, so it comes from our source. So
Okay,
we had to integrate into a lot of these projects and into Bitmaps, into BRC20, into the namespace, into Ordinals. We had to open it up and be able to like we were the ones basically indexing all that data and and fetching it all. So if you go actually on our website and you go, now that we have it all, like, it's all transparent too. So it's not just through our insights tab, it's actually now on our Ordinals tab. And you can see all of it, like real time updates of what's happening in the Ordinal space as far as
I love that heat map that you guys came up with. Yeah. That thing is so badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sick. It's sick, the heat map. And I think the visualization of it is just so helpful. There's nothing currently like it. There's nothing where there's like some good visualizations, and not saying that nothing will come up, someone will probably eventually copy what we're doing, which makes sense. I mean, like, it just this is like, we're just in the beginning innings of Ordinals, right? So I think we have we have a long ways to go, but I think we position ourselves pretty well as far as like the GeniiData Ordinals product. I think that and we even have like the BRC20 index, so we actually ended up creating a BRC20 index too, which is pretty awesome.
Now I noticed through your platform you're also able to like mint or inscribe BRC20s through it, so it kind of like piggyback on a concept me and Will have been like really interested in. Is like, okay, you guys are obviously critical indexers in general, critical infrastructure components to this ordinal space, this building on Bitcoin movement. So what is like the sustainability mechanisms, like how are you guys generating like revenue to sustain operation, right? Because this is a lot of work, a lot of maintenance, And because like Unisat, it's pretty obvious they can index things, but they have a pretty obvious revenue source, right? It's their secondary marketplace they've built.
Yeah, their
inscriptions
as well.
So I'm just curious, like, what is that thing for GeniiData and any other indexer out there? Like, what's the most agreed upon strategy to like make sure you guys don't turn off the switch?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great. There's server costs that go into it. There's operational costs that go into all of this. So yeah, it's not cheap to do what we're doing, and to do it at a large scale, which we plan on doing it, hopefully throughout this whole bear market to the next next bull run. We're still here and running, efficiently and effectively as possible. I think how we go about that is we have a few different revenue sources. So our first one is our premium outlet, which is basically you can upload your own data off chain, and the only way you can do that is by being subscribed to our premium, and that's like that costs some dollar amount every month, and then from that, so that's been around for quite some time. It's been around since we've actually been established, but you can use all the on-chain data we have for free. So like the tool is free for people that want to use on-chain data. If you want to upload your own data that might not be available, that we have indexed, that we might not have indexed, then you can upload your own. So from that source, you can create revenue, or we create revenue. We have another source like our flow product, which is our trading tool, and that's going to help you get real-time crypto and option order flow updates. So what's happening as far as on-chain to off-chain within the DeFi and DEXs ecosystems, and then as well on off-chain as far as centralized exchanges. So on-chain DEXs and then off-chain centralized exchanges, you'll get all the real-time whale updates and all of that. And yeah, to be able to use it to the most comprehensive way possible, that cost a fee as well, a monthly fee.
Yeah.
And then we have the Ordinals product. So we have a few different products that will help us create it. The Ordinals product, which we've already been seeing a quite amount of people use our Inscription service, because it's pretty easy to use once you see all like the alpha. Like if you go on our tool, you'll see we have an alpha signal on the homepage, and it'll show you like who is minting what, and then as well like what if it's a whale, if it's smart money. A whale basically means it holds it holds a ton of that wallet address holds has made a lot of different inscriptions based on their history. And then smart money means it's been to mints early on. So like let's say if you minted OMB or Bitcoin frogs early on, or let's say a stats name, if you minted those early on, you're one of the early guys that minted, you'll be considered smart money. So like each one has so then you can go from that alpha signal, you can literally just go straight from there, and you can inscribe on our tool itself, and you can copy and paste the inscription that they used and then inscribe it on our tool. So it makes it very simple and easy to process. That's as far as if you see like some crazy good trades or moves to get into in the GeniiData, in the Ordinals ecosystem, you can go straight to the inscriptions tab, and yeah, you can you don't really miss a beat as far as like what's happening in the space.
Yeah, it's very similar to like following some of the like really important ETH addresses that were involved in a bunch of like mints that ended up doing like a crazy run. So you just kind of follow those addresses, and if next time they mint something, then on GeniiData you can just follow that address, mint whatever they're minting from GeniiData.
Yeah,
right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like sorry for interrupting, but yeah, that was like the idea behind it. It's like we're basically trying to be the debanker Etherscan of Ordinals.
Yeah, Etherscan, and then all this can be like you're saying, you create derivative products from like, I guess, because our objective as like content creators is always like, man, we got to have our finger on the pulse as much as possible. But you guys actually like create the pulse in a way. Like you get to create like the machinery that's like reading the pulse that the rest of us kind of like
That's right.
have to interpret to like give the diagnosis out.
Yeah.
It's like we're the doctors out there.
Right.
You guys are the ones providing the equipment to know like where the pulse is and all that stuff, right? So it's very important. So there's a lot of products, of course, that you guys can spin up at any time.
Yeah.
Really, because you guys provide all these important signals, right? So,
Yeah, the alpha signals.
yeah, I could see you guys definitely turning into like a Delphi digital. Like now you could start aiding in like how how to form optimal ordinal token economics and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Let's strategize and help these projects build, because as of right now, there's like not one ecosystem like leveraging these tokens in any like sensible way, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like-
and if you're getting these alpha signals, or anybody can get them at this point, that you could just start making tweets and really
Yeah.
like indicating like what is happening in the markets. Like if there's this important address minting these like tokens,
Mhm.
I mean those are like valuable tweets that people would like to know, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, this is very useful.
Yeah, it is interesting. And yeah, I guess it provides more insight into the value of indexing, right? Because
Yeah.
again, this is a new concept to me, a new revelation. Because I
Yeah.
think whenever we entered the space as builders, a lot of this was already handled from the
Yeah.
Ethereum side.
Right.
We came in like at that stage of like that ecosystem maturing. But now that we're all like, focused on the Bitcoin side, it's so primitive and nascent. Like
Yeah.
indexing is front and center as like, this is the problem, right?
So how deep, Adev, do you guys go in terms of like supporting like meta protocols? Do you because right now it's like the way that we like to explain indexers is like they're the smart contract layers, so to speak, of like the Ordinals ecosystem, and they're the ones who handle like the logic of like a specific purpose. Like for example, in bitmaps, you can only mint a bitmap as long as it exists as a block, right? You cannot mint future bitmaps. And this is going against, first is first on the Ordinals like inscriptions.
Yeah.
Right. So how far do you guys go in terms of like supporting like really complex meta protocols? Do you go all the way, or do you only go in if there's traction? Like how do you make that determination?
Yeah, ideally we try to be as efficient as possible. So we want to go in as nuanced as we possibly can to support it to its full
Okay.
capabilities. That's the whole point. We want to be the most efficient as possible, so the whole space doesn't have any lack as far as what's transparent and what's happening. So we try to go to the end, and we try to have the conversations, those close conversations with all the contributors to those projects.
Okay. So you're talking about transparency. So indexers, like kind of to kind of start off, since ordinals are so new, right? This is like a very immature sort of like development space. Right now, indexers are like very centralized. They kind of like dictate what happens, so to speak. Are there any plans for you guys to decentralize in one way or another? Like, do you guys think about that, or is it still too early?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's one of the reasons why. Excuse me. That's one of the reasons why we've been trying to work closely with Alex and Domo. We really want to. We believe in an open, decentralized future for indexers, and that's kind of like the end all, or I would say the most important aspect of what this space can hold as far as what we can do for indexing. Think that's one of our most important visions for the future for indexing, is trying to make it as open source as possible and as well as decentralized as possible. So anyone can basically either correct certain coding, correct a certain flaw that might be a bug, or creates like a chain reaction that gives off like a bad indexed data source. So we want to create as an efficient marketplace as possible. We believe the best way to do that is through open sourcing it, and then decentralization is just a great way to make sure that there's no one fail point. So we're trying to help the space do that. And right now we just want to show our products off, get people to use them get people to get alpha, help people, start to, like, our whole idea is to democratize data, right? So to be able to democratize data is a decentralized future.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like that's our ultimate goal, is to really open source all of these indexers. Like we're new to it, we ourselves weren't, we've been obviously indexing other chains for a while, but to the ordinal space, we're new to it. We're new to becoming the infrastructure for them,
Mm-hmm.
for ordinals, for all Bitcoin assets. So it's quite exciting for us to have this responsibility for ordinals, and we're excited because we found a great space to really make a large imprint.
Yeah, we feel similar as well.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
I think we made a pretty significant impact because our focus is definitely Metaverse. We made a pretty big one on the Ethereum side, but we have this opportunity with Bitmap to make like as big of an impact as could potentially be had.
Yeah.
Considering like this is the first like standard attempt to emerge from the Metaverse ecosystem. But I just wanted to ask a little bit more on the Alex Labs thing, because I don't know, me personally reading the sentiment, I guess, that's out there, a lot of people, they don't see this as decentralized as an effort as I guess people envision this indexer thing to become. Like, so what is it that you've seen with this coalition, this attempt, this collaborative effort that you think is like the de facto solution to eventually becoming something that's decentralized enough to where like we don't have to trust these indexers individually too much?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're always going to get the naysayers and the people that don't think that this is like the best attempt. I think this is a great attempt to start this whole vision of decentralization of indexers. Obviously, I don't know if it's going to be the one that gets it right first. Not sure if our attempt to help them out will help as well bring decentralization. But I do love the intention. I think that's the most important thing, is that we have the right intentions, and I think the right intention is bringing decentralization and bringing a more efficient future for no like fail points, to have data become distributed and not, so we don't have one central point of failure, and we don't rely too much on one source. I think the intention behind Alex Labs is, so there's been initiatives across the whole that whole space, that whole act, that we're going to work together and bring a lot of coexisting indexers to work together to create something that can help to create a decentralized indexer. So I think that's the right intention, and we'll see how it plays out. We'll see if all of us are able to work together in this cohesive cohort, and if we are, then I think we can get something close to what we want done.
Yeah,
it must be complex, just because everyone has their own interpretation of what is decentralized. Like, like the only thing that we've seen that is extremely decentralized is Bitcoin, and then it really gets more centralized when you go beyond Bitcoin. Right.
Yeah, it feels kind of similar to Bitmaps too, in a sense, where like obviously the ethos for Bitmaps is as decentralized as a Metaverse ecosystem can, at least from its inception point, become. But it's going to require the collaboration of, I guess, actual like centralized organizations, entities, protocols, whatever you want to call it, all contributing towards this like decentralized ecosystem, or a broader protocol that's more distributed, right? So it makes, overall, I guess, over time, there is, like you're saying, the single point of failure is the biggest, or attack, is the biggest thing we're trying to avoid as like ecosystem creators, right? So as long as there's like enough distribution and I guess enough maybe like checks and balances in place, because that I don't even think that has really entered the discussion, is like how are we going to govern all these things, right? That's kind of like what's up in the air, as far as, okay, if there's some sort of process to distribute and bring access specifically for indexers into the system,
right?
Like what is the the mechanism to, adding or removing these actors within this ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
That is a little bit what's like up in the air, I think, and not enough clarity in that regard, right? And I'm not expecting you to answer that because I think that's like a question for Alex Labs, you know, or whoever else is really incepting all this.
Just the whole design of like the decentralization of it,
Mhm.
because I think like whatever gets traction, that's what this network supports.
Correct.
If that traction ends up falling off below a certain threshold, it just gets like removed from the database, if you will.
It's like your airplane analogy, right?
Yeah.
You got to build the plane first.
Yeah, that's right.
Or before you send it off, and then you let the you let the community take over like the operations of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and more on that point, I think it's important that we recognize that it's good to have a lot of indexers, because once we start to have a lot of indexers, and I think that's slowly occurring, and at least in the BRC20 space, starting to see a lot more indexers come out. I think that will as well bring more efficiency, and as well it will help with not having to deal with if there's one error or one central point, we'll be able to have it distributed across all the other indexers. And I think it's super important that the space becomes a little bit more advanced before we want this decentralization to take place. Yeah. Bitcoin wasn't decentralized right away. It took time before it became the most decentralized and most protected and most trustworthy network. It took a couple years, it took 5-10 years, right, before we were like, okay, this is one of the most distributed, most decentralized networks in all of, like, I mean, all we're gonna see, right? Because technically, there's nothing close to it in crypto, but it's gonna continue to become more. The network's gonna continue to become more secure within time, and this is well going to become more distributed within time. So I think that's the whole point here. I think overall, if we continue to build here, we continue to have others that are building indexers, others that are providing data for the space, trying to open source the data for the space. I think overall we'll see a decentralized future for all of Ordinals, and especially indexers.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You're not going to decentralize anything, right? Just like on day one.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to take definitely some coordination. It's going to take the community to basically understand that it's going to take some time. And ultimately, as we're kind of figuring out this whole decentralization part, we're out here like creating metaverses and like creating BRC20s and all kinds of like weird stuff, right?
Yeah, I guess we're creating the products in anticipation of like eventually once you guys figure out all this internal infrastructure stuff, to kind of keep track of all this, like hopefully we'll be ready like to give you guys something of value, right? For you guys to kind of like maintain and track on our behalves, right? That's definitely what we see. So I guess let's speak on that a little bit, because we have we're witnessing a lot of organic, I guess, attempts at creating new, I guess, like ordinal products, new standards, whatever you want to call them. We just talked about one.
Yeah, BRC 420.
Yeah, it's like a whole new like asset creation standard, like specified for the metaverse, that has like royalty rule sets embedded within them. So like a whole new creator economy could potentially emerge from that, right? So like what is it like you individually, like from an idea like that, let's say that or whatever comes after it, what's the inflection point of like, okay, this is something that needs to be respected, something that needs to be like integrated into, for now, GeniiData, but in the future when you're part of like this even bigger system of indexing, like how is that going to even come about? Like who's gonna bring us all in,
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. We're in this phase of the Ordinals world where it's just all trial and error, like what works and what doesn't work, and we're testing things out endlessly. We've been testing obviously BRC20, we tested ORC20, there was ORC Cash is still around. All these tokens are still around, right? But now with the BRC 420, I think from Recursiveverse, Jeff, the founder, he's been talking about doing something like this for quite some time now, and it's honestly really cool to see what's happening from this. This could be very interesting, and I was reading into it earlier today about what the possibilities are for it, and I obviously I want to do more research into this and play around in the whole ecosystem before I can say whether this is, something that like that could be legitimate and reach an inflection point of getting a lot of people involved. And there was also like a BRC 721 that I think was also like a recursive standard. But I like the idea of recursives and recursions, and I think it's just a lot to take in because there's so many things happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think when you reach a point of inflection when we start to see the big dogs in the space, the big developers, like the big infrastructure tools like ourselves or some or Unistat or these other tools like even Or.io, even though it's not really a tool, it's more of like a marketplace, but people like that, and then the big dogs in the space where they're willing to take it more serious and develop on it. I think that's a really important thing if they're developing on it, and then as well if liquidity is moving to that certain token. I think that's where it can reach an inflection point. I think BRC20 was able to do it because it was basically really the first token standard ever built, and it was a unique idea and took the imagination of many in the space. And I believe there will be some more tokens that are created in the ordinal space, but not sure which ones will do that. If anything that goes from 20 million to 100 billion to $1 billion in just total value, it's pretty impressive. So I think once we see something surpass 100 million, that's when you should start kind of taking a glimpse into it.
Okay.
That makes sense.
That's good. That's good information to put out there to all the, I guess,
token creators,
ecosystem birthers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
that's a good.
No
benchmark.
Financial advice though, but that's kind of like my opinion on it, I guess.
Sure.
Well, yeah, if that's how you guys are thinking about it, then I'm pretty sure that's how the other indexers are thinking about it as well. It's like there are these like mental thresholds, I'm sure, that factor in. It's like, okay, like we need to start paying closer attention to this and then support it because, the invisible hand is there pushing this thing above the rest, right? So,
I see.
Exactly.
I see a lot of counterparts like with Ethereum with the Graph token and the Graph protocol. It allows people, developers, to create their own meta protocol, if you will, code it themselves and submit it to the network. And then they take the burden of like supporting that whole meta protocol themselves by updating the GraphQL. And so I see something similar happening here with like ordinals and indexers here is where if we come up with our own, BRC standard, right, and we think it's better and we're going to use it for our own thing or whatever it is, well, we need indexers to kind of support it. And so why don't we code like what's necessary for indexers to kind of look up on the Bitcoin blockchain, submit that into this like, eventual decentralized network. And that network is the one that kind of supports our protocol. And I feel like that's probably going to be how we decentralize something like this. But having said that, it's very complex.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be an easy task.
Yeah, correct.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel?
We also built MetaZone, the first app store for the metaverse.
Buy, sell, and explore a new class of digital assets like our flagship game, Rovi.ai.
Support us by collecting your digital assets through MetaZone at metazone.io.
Like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated.
Back to the video.
So, Adev, I got a quick question for you. Were you the one who set up, who are setting up all the Twitter Spaces for GeniiData? Do you set that up? Okay. So you and I guess you and I were on a Twitter Space not too long ago, maybe like 4 weeks ago, or something like that. And I was talking about this crazy thing called DMT. Do you remember that? DMT?
There's no way you don't remember that.
I do. I mean, you gotta.
So
DMT the drug or the
kind of close. It's close to a drug, but it's an actual digital matter theory.
Oh yes, yeah. This was super interesting.
Yeah. So I think what it is, it's nothing really complex, and it's not like a protocol or anything, but it's a name that identifies what makes specifically Bitmap interesting, but also it's a name that describes human nature and like in our entire history of like recognizing patterns. And the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because something like DMT and eventually a product of DMT, which is called NAT, which is non-arbitrary tokens, it's going to rely on indexers, just like everything else relies on indexers. And so basically, the concept and the theory is this: the reason why Bitmap is interesting is because it's based on the data of Bitcoin's blockchain, right? I think that's why it captured the momentum as quickly as it did, because when we talked about it for the first time, 3 weeks later, it blocked out. 800,000 inscriptions were inscribed in 3 weeks, and it's one of the larger Ordinals projects out there, and we think it's because that it's non-arbitrary. It's a metaverse that has always essentially kind of been there. And Satoshi Nakamoto basically discovered it, right? He didn't invent it; he discovered bitmaps, and that's why it got people so interested. So this idea of non-arbitrary tokens, we feel like can be applied to the fungible aspect on Bitcoin and the non-fungible aspect. So yeah, I think we just wanted to introduce that concept to you, and like if we needed some sort of like contribution in the sense of like support from GeniiData, how would we go about it?
For the DMT theory,
DMT, yeah.
I mean, me personally, I thought that was a really interesting idea, and I quickly spoke to my friends about that afterwards, and how that. I mean, I obviously need to brush up on it a little bit. Like right after I remembered a lot of it, but I thought it was like a really interesting theory. I think we should do something as far as collaborative video, something like that, where we explain it to each other, some short analysis on it, 3 to 5 minutes, and I just kind of publish it on our YouTube, on our socials, and I think it's an incredible idea, and it goes hand in hand with what we're trying to do, and as well just for the whole like ordinal space, mainly for bitmaps. But I think we're agnostic when it comes to which ordinal products we like the most, right? We want to see the whole space succeed. So we're very much interested in doing something like that. I think a video, I ask you the question, and then you go from there and explain it. But I do think it's a pretty new innovative idea that I never even thought about until you mentioned it.
I think ultimately it's again the invisible hand, right? So it's just about getting that collective understanding that this is I guess like a principle native to like Bitcoin creation. Within this ecosystem that hasn't existed before in Web3. Like it's a whole new pivot
think of it as BRC20s, except every single BRC20 that gets introduced has some source from the Bitcoin blockchain. So let me give you an example. So we've been thinking about this a lot, and one example, and we've been kind of writing a framework for all this so that anybody can inscribe their own like pattern recognition, and then so let's say you find a pattern on Bitcoin's blockchain with let's call it 100 Bitcoin transaction, right? That is a simple pattern that you can see on Bitcoin's blockchain, right? 100 Bitcoin. So then what we would need help with, an indexer or some sort of data aggregator, is to tell us how many transactions have occurred with 100 Bitcoin, right? Let's assume it's 100,000. So now we have an inscription that identifies the pattern, right? 100 Bitcoin transaction, right? Whatever that format is, doesn't matter, right? But it exists. And what we want to create is allow people to recursively inscribe to it and create their own projects, whether it's like a bitmap focused project where if you hold a parcel that has 100 Bitcoin transaction, you can inscribe this non-arbitrary token. And then some other projects who say, well, I want to create an art project that is based on 100 Bitcoin transaction. And so they inscribe to it and they create their own project. And so you could see like basically infinite amount of projects who all point to that pattern, and they're all creating assets based on the data on Bitcoin's blockchain. And
instead of like an arbitrary just preset parameter that some human generated out of thin air that really has no tie to anything of substance, right?
Right.
That's the big differentiator. Is like now we can create digital products, digital matter, I guess, if you want to take it that far, rooted to something of substance within like the Bitcoin block data itself. So like, and why to do that? I mean,
that's because it's new.
Yeah, my answer is always like, why the fuck not?
Yeah.
Right. Because we're all doing things one way now because we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We don't have an option for something that's non-arbitrary. Right. And I feel like that is kind of like it tags into like what is so attractive and like alluring about this building on Bitcoin space, because the Ordinals started with the similar thing. Like Casey Rodimer saw there's something innately substantial within like the Bitcoin block information. It's the chronological order of these satoshis that are introduced in every block.
Right.
Let me do something with that. Let me create some new value called ordinal theory.
Yeah.
Now you can like inscribe new information onto these units, right? And then Bitoshi with bitmaps. Let's create a whole metaverse like infrastructure around this idea of the blocks
and then
the
rare
transactions.
Sats.
Yeah, there's a lot. So we're seeing these things kind of like organically happen on their own. And now it's just a matter of like let's slap a label around it or like a name, an umbrella principle, I guess, of like this activity.
Yeah.
Leveraging Bitcoin or any really blockchain data, really potentially any data really.
Yeah.
To as a root source of information for new digital creation. So yeah, that's just but of course, like you're saying, we got to put it out there. It needs to be formalized. It needs to be some structure to these ideas.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a product.
I think it's a great idea. I really do. I really I was gonna ask you like what way do you think we could work together and helping you kind of
I have one question. So
like support you guys.
If so going on to like, going deeper in this topic, if we needed a count of how many transactions transacted 100 Bitcoin, is that something that GeniiData has already, and it's just like a matter of putting in that query in the database and like getting that information? Or is this something that you'd have to basically kind of retool and look at the Bitcoin core and then just like extract that data and put it into a database? Is it readily available, or is it something custom you have to put in?
Yeah, it might be readily available. Like I said before, we're plugged into Bitcoin Core, and we have all the transactions happening, so we have it all indexed. So it might be readily available. I'll have to look into that myself and ask, but I think we might have to retool. I'm getting that feeling that we might have to retool in order for us to be able to pull that data.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Because when we say Bitcoin data, obviously a Bitcoin transaction, that is data, right? Mm-hmm. But we're talking about all of the data within the block, right? The hash values, the inputs and outputs, the miner messages, all these like weird, obscure things. I feel like people can find patterns in all these things, and we would need a method where people submit a pattern, and then but in that submission, it tells you it's like that pattern, it was recognized 1 million times on the Bitcoin blockchain, or 10 times, 100 times. So we need that sort of new functionality in order for people to identify a pattern and then tell us like how many times that pattern exists, so that when a PFP project comes in, I was like, which of these patterns can I use to kind of leverage for my PFP project? It's like, I want the pattern that has, 1,000 times, or maybe 200,000 times. I use that pattern. I create my PFP project, which essentially generates 200,000 pictures because it's from the data of Bitcoin's blockchain. And then, there's my project, like non-arbitrary, sources, right? So, this is definitely something brand new. And
we definitely would like your help to explore this further, because you guys are experts, and we're talking to other indexers, for sure, who are also very deeply well knowledged in like how to analyze Bitcoin's data.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because the alternative is that we'd have to index all this stuff ourselves.
Yeah.
And like if we got indexes already in the space, why are we doing this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question. Have you had a chance to look in our insight tool and see exactly because we might be able to help as far as, I'm not sure if we have if you want to look at all the Bitcoin transactions that happen in the whole, in all its history, I'm not sure if we can provide that.
And maybe that's not necessary. We don't need to go to the full depths of all of Bitcoin just yet. We could just start like at the top layer, which is like the transactions. or whatever top layer that you have. We just start there, find patterns here, guys, right? And then later we start supporting other pieces of data on Bitcoin's blockchains, like a new layer. It's like the rock layer, right? It's a new layer of like data that you can source.
Yeah.
And then you just go deeper and deeper and then find more data, and eventually you start creating all kinds of
new digital matter.
That's right. That's right.
So we have, from the data we have blocks, transaction inputs, and then the outputs, and then all the transactions.
Okay.
Sounds like there's plenty in there to like.
Oh yeah,
it's plenty in there to like toy around.
Yeah,
with.
the transaction hash that has plenty of source data for like pattern recognition. So
yeah, we have block time, block number, block hash, the hex number, the size, weight, inputs, outputs, total, transaction index. So we have a decent amount. You should explore into it a little bit. See what you guys can. I'm not. We use Spark SQL.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. And just like kind of maybe even use a little bit of ChatGPT to help you optimize it a little bit, and then you can also use our tutorial guides that we have that can give you some of the code to help you start.
Beautiful.
So with that information, is it even possible to get a count of a pattern through that information, or is that like something custom that we would probably have to build alongside GeniiData?
Yeah, it might have to be something you build custom. I'm not sure if you can find patterns. You wouldn't be able to get like block hash.
Yeah, just like the whole thing. Yeah. Okay, so basically,
and you would be able to get the fees too, and all of that. But I'm not sure if you could get patterns. And especially from I'm not sure from what your perspective you want exactly.
No, I think I get it now. So we can get all that information that GeniiData already has. We take that information and then we can start parsing it out for pattern recognition that anybody submits.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. I think that makes sense too. Yeah, I think you can do. And if you need our help and doing something like that, I can connect you with some of our guys from our product development team. And I think like what we can do is we can clip some of this podcast, and I can also send it over to them. And like I think you explained it well here exactly what you guys are trying to do with the pattern recognition within that DMT model.
Yeah.
And no one's going to forget that, by the way. No one will forget what the DMT model means or stands for, now that you explained it to me. So
and I think it's interesting, and we're so like locked into this because the entire like history of cryptocurrency has been pure arbitrary. Like the whole thing, right? It wasn't until we had Ordinals and we had, the rare sats and then Bitmap, like that's when we started to realize like these things are non-arbitrary. They've been there. They're just now officially recognized. They've been discovered, right? Correct. The patterns.
Yeah.
And so it's like we were wondering, it's like, why is Bitmap so interesting? Why are Ordinals so interesting? Why?
Yeah.
And it was because of this.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
because
we want to see more of this basically, but in order for more of this to happen, standards have to kind of like exist so that creators and developers can leverage them, right?
All right, Adev, you've definitely confirmed it for us. We have a lot more work to do. But I appreciate it.
I have a question for you guys.
Sure.
And this doesn't need to necessarily be on or not. I'm curious, like there were Bitcoin NFTs in like 2015, 2014. What makes you guys excited on Ordinals right now? Like why? Obviously from our perspective we're excited, we're working on it, but I want to hear from your perspective, from a content creator's perspective, and as well you guys are very high level thinkers in the space. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I appreciate that. I think it's very similar to how indexers think, and maybe even traders, degen traders. It's like, even though these NFTs have existed since 2015, like Counterparty and all that, they never captured any liquidity, right? And so it wasn't as interesting, right?
Yeah, I guess we weren't around, but I've heard the lore and the stories of like that was kind of like the movement that was kind of like generated there, as far as like let's build new stuff with this blockchain thing that we that where Bitcoin originated from. That's kind of like what spun into Ethereum, right? And the whole smart contract concept, and that obviously flourished and boomed.
It's true.
But the thing that's really interesting to us is like now it's all returning to Bitcoin, and it introduces a slew of problems, which for whatever reason in our history's past, we get attracted to problems, especially in the metaverse space, because like we're no strangers to problem solving.
Yeah.
Right. Building for the metaverse has been like one of the more difficult things, and we've run across so many that we can't do it alone. Like no way.
Yeah.
And we tried our best to convince like other metaverse builders of like to identify these core dilemmas and problems that we found, but it seems like none of them agree with us. So it's like we're tasked to do it all ourselves,
right.
Which is unfeasible. Yeah. So like this whole Bitmap thing comes about. It's like, all right, now we have this alignment mechanism for metaverse builders and devs. We're all on the same team now. Yeah, we're all like individually contributing infrastructure collectively, as opposed to like we're doing our own thing.
Right.
You guys stay away.
Yeah. Silos.
Yeah. That's the difference. The opportunity of Bitmap and building in this like Ordinals infrastructure is that. And it feels a lot more like collaborative.
Yeah.
Like we're all working together. So I feel like there's a better chance of like actually the real vision of the metaverse being realized here, as opposed to siloverse outside of here. You know what I mean? And just because, Will will tell you, dude, I found no interest in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Pre-Ordinals. I thought it was the most boring snooze fest of all time.
You're a psychopath, dude. Thinking that.
It was so boring. The narrative of Bitcoin is just, digital gold all day, every day.
Sexy.
I got so bored and turned off by it. I was like, I want to spend my time in Ethereum where they're actually building cool shit.
Right.
And now that building cool shit energy is here in Bitcoin. Yeah. And it's just way more attractive now to where we've basically completely faded Ethereum.
So at the end of the day, it's basically kind of the timing. It sounds like, like maybe Bitcoin wasn't ready in 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
During that time, but we saw ETH experiment with NFTs, and a lot of the experimentation happened there with DeFi, and we saw that it's possible in the Bitcoin realm now.
Yeah. I guess it was largely misunderstood that you could even build on a blockchain like you could with Ethereum.
Yeah.
And so back in 2015, like it wasn't clear what was happening with like the NFTs on there.
Yeah, and I guess like the problems and dilemmas that I guess we as an ecosystem on top of, Ordinals or whatever that we're dealing with today, there probably weren't enough developers around back then to deal with all those problems, right?
Yeah.
So they just spun off into Ethereum and created like a better like architecture framework with smart contracts from the get-go.
Yeah.
Attracted more devs and I think. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, these are good questions, Adev. You got any more?
No, I was just curious because I wanted to hear your thoughts. I've been hearing like in spaces people talk about like other like the Bitcoin NFTs in 2014, 2015, and I don't know. I just thought you guys would have a good response to that, which you did. I think it makes sense. I think overall, most important thing to think about is the timing. Is the timing right now with Ordinals, because I want to see Ordinals thrive. I want to see Ordinals continue to thrive, and I mean, we're building in the bear market, which is a very exciting thing. So that's when, most exciting things happen is during the bear market. And then you see things take off in the bull market. I just want to see the takeoff part happen, and that's what I'm like kind of a little anxious for, nervous for. So,
and we've seen it happen before. The last bear market, like we were there when we saw Axie Infinity, like a baby. And people were like, it was like a handful of players.
Yeah.
We're like, dude,
what are they doing?
Is this going to be it?
Yeah.
And guess what? It became it.
Yeah.
It became the it that proved Web3 gaming is like a real thing to pay attention to.
That's right.
What else did we see? We saw we just NFTs in general.
NFTs.
We're like, people are like
CryptoKitties, CryptoPunks, stuff like that.
Yeah, and all this was done during a bear market. It's like people really want to collect art.
Right.
Seriously?
Yeah.
And then like a year or two later, guess what? Everybody wanted digital art.
Yeah, it was like $60 billion of volume for just digital art.
Correct. So we already have that experience in mind. Like, do not fade anything that's being built in a bear market.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just can't. Because you never know.
No.
Some of these are going to become darlings and unicorns of the future.
Yeah, this is the infrastructure. This is the foundation of the next bull run is being built right now.
Exactly. So that's why, we've always said the same thing as a content creators, because we've been around for 4 years. So it's like, dude, bear markets are our favorite time.
Oh, yeah. This is way more interesting than the bull market.
Once the bull market comes, it's just everyone's just like full blown marketing mode.
Yeah,
smoke and mirrors. Like nobody really knows.
Yeah,
everyone's throwing out crazy trailers and videos and stuff. That's really what's going on. Everyone's just trying to sell.
Yeah,
right. So
frothy as crap as hell.
Yeah. So we're aligned in that, dude, for sure.
Yeah,
we're definitely equally as enthused.
All right, Adev, thank you so much for joining us, man. This has been an amazing talking about GeniiData and a little bit of DMT here at the end.
Everyone gotta throw in a little DMT.
Yeah.
Imagine if you guys actually were talking about the drug, though. Like, what a pivot that would have been. It's like, have you tried DMT
yet? The medicine, let's call it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, man. So yeah, thank you again, Adev. You're more than welcome to come back with any updates that you guys have, and we're more than open to working with you guys. You guys have been amazing, always contributing to the Ordinals ecosystem, which is quickly growing. And yeah, man, we're just happy to collaborate. And so yeah, appreciate you for joining us, man.
Thank you, guys. No, this was awesome. This was a great discussion. It's always fun to get into the depths of what's happening in this Ordinals ecosystem. So definitely we should do a spaces together, all of us, and continue the dialect, the discussion.
Yeah,
between the dialogue. Sorry, between all this. So
yeah.
One more quick thing before you go is you have something called an OG pass that is up for claims and grabs.
That's
correct.
Right.
So we're gonna have a link in the description of like how there's a Twitter thread I think or tweet that tells you all the qualification. But quickly, if you can, just summarize the idea of the OG pass and what it can enable for holders.
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding me. That's good. I think so right now we have a few different things that will occur with the OG pass. It's going to be a way for us to determine who are the early adopters within our ecosystem. So early adopters will get special privileges as far as like airdrops go, as far as special access to certain events that we have going on, digital events to real life events. You'll get VIP access. You'll get very discounted fees on our inscriptions and other services that we offer on our platform. You'll get a very discounted fee to even free options, and then we have a lot more things that we have coming to Genesis Pass holders. And currently, the only way you're going to be able to get them is through either our partners like you guys or through basically through our partners. That's the only way. So we're gonna allocate you guys a couple to give to your community, and then that's the only way people will actually get it through partners and through our own giveaway we're having on our Twitter. So we're gonna have a very limited amount, like I think max 500 something around there.
Okay.
So it's gonna be free for everyone that does get access to mint it, and then after that it's gonna be secondary. So that's kind of like the idea behind it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to that drop for sure. Yeah, we've seen OG passes in the past do significant work. Unisat had one.
Yep.
It got you past that ridiculous paywall barrier that existed in the beginning days, where because inscriptions were not as cheap back in those days. You had to inscribe a lot just to even get access. Right. So yeah, you could do a lot as far as like providing utility and bonus
access.
User experience enhancements with these types of devices. So yeah, I love it. Definitely.
Yeah, I really appreciate that extension to our community. So again, Adev, we don't want to take any more of your time. I really appreciate your time with us, and again, more than welcome to come back. And yeah, appreciate it, and have a good one, man.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. It was a pleasure. Have a good rest of your day.
All right, bye-bye.
Peace.